Hi, I'm Lisa from Impact, and in this video, we will be talking about the usage of verbs. We will be talking about 5 points when it comes to the usage of verbs. The first one is present and past, the second one have and had, the third one with time expressions, the fourth one will and would, and the fifth one is the passive forms. So let's get into it. Let's start with the first one. Present and past. For the usage of verbs in a present form or in the past form, my tip here for you is that you need to know your verb ones and your verb twos. If it's a regular verb, like I said, it's simple. You simply put an ed at the back, but if it's a regular verb, you will have to memorize it. Now, let's look at the first sentence. He takes the money when he wants it. He takes. Takes is verb what? 1 or 2? 1, correct. And wants is verb 1 also. You need to be consistent. If the sentence is in present form, then everything needs to be in the present form. Let's look at the second sentence. He took the money when he wanted it. Took, what verb is that? 2. It's an irregular one from the verb 1, take. He took the money when he wanted it. Wanted is verb 2 also. As you can see, it is consistent. He took the money when he wanted it. Consistently in the past form. Now let's look at the third sentence. I know that he took the money yesterday. Let's look at the first clause. I know. Know here is what verb? Verb 1. It's in present. That he took the money yesterday. He took. Took is what verb? Verb 2. Exactly. Why is the first clause in present and the second clause in past? When you know something now. So this situation is different. I know about something now that happened in the past, took. And that is why now uses verb 1 and took uses verb 2. The usage of your verb needs to be correct in accordance to the situation. Let's move on to the next part. The usage of verb with have and had. How do you use verbs with the auxiliary verbs have and had? Have and had are always followed by verb 3. You need to memorize your verb 3s. Let's look at these examples. John has taken the car to work for 10 years. Let's look at the second example. John had taken the car to work for 10 years before he retired last year. In the sentence, John has taken the car to work for 10 years, it follows this format. Subject, John, plus has, plus verb 3, taken. That format is called present perfect tense. Let's look at the second sentence. John had taken the car to work for 10 years before he retired last year. That format follows subject, John, plus had, plus verb 3, taken. That format is called past perfect tense. The second clause, he retired last year, follows the format subject, he, plus verb 2, retired. That is called the simple past tense. What are the differences between all these 3 tenses? Let's look at the first one, present perfect tense. For 10 years. John has taken the car to work for 10 years. When did he start taking the car to work? 10 years ago, exactly. Is he still doing it now? Yes, he is. So present perfect tense is used when you start something that happened in the past and you are still doing it until now. Let's look at past perfect. John had taken the car to work for 10 years before he retired last year. So when did John take the car to work in that sentence? 10 years ago, okay? But really, is it 10 years ago? Because he stopped, did he not? When did he stop? Before he retired last year. Exactly. So past perfect tense is also for duration, like present perfect tense. However, it no longer occurs anymore. Why doesn't it occur anymore in this sentence? Because he retired. Now let's look at the sentence, he retired. He retired is past simple tense. When did he retire? Last year. So past simple tense is something that happened in the past without any duration. You can use time expressions as a clue to know what grammar structure to use when you are creating a sentence. The usage of verbs with time expressions. Now that you know the past perfect tense, the simple past tense, and the present perfect tense, I will now tell you what time expression goes with each grammar structure. Past perfect tense uses the time expression by, like by 1920, or before I went. Simple past tense uses time expressions such as in, or last, in 1920, last night. Present perfect tense uses the time expression since 1920, and for 5 years. Let's look at some examples. John blank the book by 1920. The second one, John blank the book in 1920. The third one, John blank the book since 1920. If I'm going to tell you that the verb that you will use is write, how do you fill in the blanks? The first one, if you said had written, you got it right. The second one, wrote, very good, verb 2. And the third one, has written, correct. The first one uses what structure? Past perfect, exactly, because it uses the time expression by. The subject, John, is followed by had and verb 3. The second one, wrote, uses what structure? Past simple. The subject, John, is followed by verb 2, wrote, because it uses the time expression in. Let's look at the third sentence. What structure is that? Present perfect, exactly. John, the subject, is followed by has plus verb 3 written, because it uses the time expression since. Now, the difference between the three of this, if you still remember, the first one, by 1920, by here means what? What does by mean? By 1920, what had happened? He had finished the book. By 1920, he finished it. In the second one, in 1920, what happened? He did it. He wrote the book. And in the last one, since 1920, what does since here mean? It started, exactly. He started writing the book in 1920. Let's move on to will and would. How do you use verbs with the words will and would? Will comes after a present statement, and would comes after a past statement. Let's go through the examples. I know that he blank arrives soon. And the second one, I knew that he blank arrives soon. I know. What verb is know? Verb 1. And knew is verb 2. So what is the answer for the blank in the first sentence? Will, exactly, because it's in the present. And knew, I knew that he would arrive soon, because that's in the past. Very good. Here's a tip for you. After will and would, what follows it? What word follows it? The word arrive. In both present or past, it is still followed by the word arrive. And both arrives are in verb 1. Exactly. So, will and would is always followed by verb 1. Now, this goes for all modal verbs. Will and would is called a modal verb. What are other modal verbs? We have can, may, shall. You use that the same way you use will. And then we have could, might, should, and you follow that the way that you use would. Now we move to the usage of verbs in passive forms. The passive form goes with this structure, a to be followed by verb 3 followed by the object. The object part is optional. Let's look at the first example. We wrote the letter last night. In the passive form, it becomes the letter was written by us last night. We is a subject. It becomes us, which is an object. And the letter moves to the front and it becomes the subject. The letter was written by us last night. Was here is a to be. Why is the to be was? Wrote. What verb is wrote? Verb 2. Exactly. From the verb 1 write. Verb 2 is used for past simple. So the to be that you will be using is was. The letter was. What is followed by the to be? The word written, which is a verb 3. Exactly. By us, which is the object. Let's look at the third sentence. The letter was written last night. In this next sentence, I omitted by us. And the sentence is still fine. It's correct. But let's look at the third sentence. The letter wrote last night. Is that sentence correct? The letter wrote last night. The letter here is a subject. Wrote is a verb 2. Can a letter write? No, exactly. And this is why it needs to be made in the passive form, because a letter cannot write itself. It needs somebody to write it for it. Therefore, the letter wrote last night is incorrect. The to be can change in accordance to the structure of the sentence. There are different to be's. There's is, there's are for present, there's was and were for past simple, there's has and have and had and being. So depending on what sentence structure you want to use, the to be can change as long as it is followed by a verb 3. You are now so much closer to knowing what's right and wrong in the English structure. In our next video, we will be discussing examples of questions that have to do with the usage of verbs, so stay tuned to that.